मॅडम, तुम्ही जॉईन होऊ देत न होऊ देत, बरोबर 3:30ला सुरू करा.
येस, ओके.
ओके मॅडम. मॅडम, जरा वेट करा, मी तुम्हाला सांगतो सुरू करण्यासंबंधी.
येस सर.
पाठवतो जरा, ते एक लेक्चर सुरू करून देतो पाठवतो.
स्टार्ट करूया सर. देवडी सर. हॅलो.
हा मॅडम.
Today, in this lecture, we are going to just learn about business and government. It means just what is the relation between business, government, or government intervention in business. And first of all, we will just see the historical perspective of that. So, in that, we cover the definition of business and what is definition of government. So what is business? It is an organization or enterprising entity that is engaged in commercial, industrial, or professional activities. And what is government? So a government is a system or group of people that is governing on organized community, generally a state. इट मीन्स एखाद्या स्टेटसाठी जे गव्हर्नमेंट एखादा ग्रुप जो म्हणजे थोड्या लोकांचा ग्रुप जो असतो तो एका गव्हर्नमेंटसाठी जो काम करत असतो एखाद्या स्टेट स्टेटसाठी जी लोक काम करत असतात ज्या लोकांचा ग्रुप काम करत असतो त्याचं बोलणे गव्हर्नमेंट होतं म्हणजेच काय तर दॅट इज द रेग्युलेटरी ॲक्शन्स टेकन बाय अ गव्हर्नमेंट इन ऑर्डर टू अफेक्ट or interfere with decisions made by individuals, groups, or organizations that is regarding just economic and social matter. Okay, one of the feature of modern business is the increasing involvement of the government in business activities. म्हणजे आत्ताच्या सध्याच्या मॉडर्न बिझनेसचं एक फीचर असं आहे की जे म्हणजे बिझनेसच्या ज्या ऍक्टिव्हिटी असतात त्यात पूर्णपणे गव्हर्नमेंट इन्व्हॉल्व्ह झालेलं आहे किंवा इन्व्हॉल्व्ह झालेलं असतं. देन ॲज ऑफ टुडे there is no country in the world where the government of the land does not interfere in one form or the other in its economic activities. Okay, it just involved in the business activity. That is, a state intervention in business seems to be old as a business itself, even in days of laissez-faire, which apparently shunned that state intervention. The government's role in the economy was almost incapable. Okay, that is, the laissez-faire doctrine ignored the fact that industrialization had always operated in an economy whose orderliness are guaranteed by the government. Okay, entrepreneur always may have considered his property as belonging to him by virtue of divine right, or as a reward for his virtue, or as the outcome of a natural economy law. But it was only the government which could guarantee him continued profession and use of his property. So, as years went by, state intervention, म्हणजेच स्टेट गव्हर्नमेंट जे असतं ते इट्स अ बिकम अ हिस्टॉरिकल नेसेसिटी, पर्टिक्युलरली आफ्टर द इंडस्ट्रियल revolution of the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Okay, the era of industrial revolution witnessed in humanity of man to man and brutalization of human nature in those very countries and in those very societies where the greatest advances were being made in the field of science and technology, and also in the field of organizations. Okay, uh, affluence and poverty, distress and luxury, and exploitation and helplessness become so juxtaposed that the need of that state intervention began to be felt much more than even before. Then came the First World War, which confirmed the inevitability of state intervention in economic activities. In 1944, when the World War was still in progress, the Department of Planning and Development was set up. Okay, a new industrial policy that is was announced by the government, and the Lord Bolle declared in 1945. So, what is government? Government has decided to take positive steps to encourage and promote industrialization of the country to the fullest extent possible. Okay, positive steps were taken, such as industries like iron and steel, machine tools, heavy chemicals, and the like, so on, which would lay the foundation for the future economic development where that is set up. Okay, so what are the reasons for state intervention or government intervention in that business activities? Hmm. That is, modern economy should be a planned economy. Government is the only agency which can plan and execute. Next reason is our constitution bind the government to take an active part in economic activities of that state. Next reason for the state intervention, that is what the people and the country need can only be understood and provided by government and not by privatization. Next reason is state participation is necessary to lay a strong base for the future development of industry and commerce. Next is state intervention is necessary to eliminate poverty. Finally, the failure of market invites government's intervention in an economy. So market fails because of three reasons only, that is externalities, public goods, and information problems. Then what are the formal controls? There are some types of controls that are, first one is formal control. Then formal controls are usually emanating from legislation. For example, the FEMA, the Companies Act 1956 and Competition Act 2002. Then what are the informal control? Then informal controls refer to the control which various groups impose upon themselves out of need and custom. Next is coercive control. Coercive regulation, that is required performance of certain actions or refraining from others in order to avoid penalties. For example, taxes must be paid or it may imprison imprisonment result. Okay. Next control is inductive. Inductive control hold out a promise of reward for compliance with desired line of action. For example, subsidies. किंवा subsidies. Subsidies may be granted to stimulate certain activities of that or government or that state. Okay, next is direct control. When government fixes prices of certain product or services, it is a control direct or it is a direct control. It means in the sense of the administered price policy of the government of India is a direct control nature. Next is indirect control. The variation of cooperative income tax to influence economic activities. Then, what are the effect on competition because of that? It means state intervention or state government intervention in business. It's depending on the relationship to competition regulations. Maybe a government regulation designed to make competition work or the Competition Act. And next is government competition with business firm as a means of setting standard of competition. And next is direct government ownership and operation to supplement competition. Okay. Next is promotional control. That is measures a positive in nature and includes such activities as expansion of public sector establishment and operation of development banks or encouragement to small scale units, provisions of incentives, etc. And last is regulatory control. It measures just ensure orderly development of industries with least wastage of resources. Okay. In that part, just economic systems are involved. That is the combination of the various agencies and entities that provide the economic structure that define the social community. These agencies are just joined by lines of trade and exchange goods. These many different objectives may be seen as desirable for an economy like efficiency, growth, liberty, and equality also. Okay. An economic system may involve production, allocation of economic input, distribution of economic outputs, landlords and land availability, and also a household that is including earnings and expenditure, consumption of goods and services in an economy. And next is financial institutions, firms, and government also. That is, alternatively, an economic system is the set of principles by which problems of economics are addressed, such as the economic problem of scarcity through allocation of finite productive resources. Okay, the scarcity problem, for example, that is require answer to basic questions such as what to produce, how to produce it, who get what is produced, and so on. Then, what are the types of economic system? The example of contemporary economic system that include the plant system, free market system, mixed economics. That is okay. Today, the world largely operates under a global economic system that is based on the free market mode of production. Okay, the first type of this economic system is plant system. Then, what is plant system? The government exerts control over the allocation and distribution of all or some goods and services. The system with the highest level of government control is communism. Okay, in theory, a communist economy is one in which the government owns all or most enterprises. That is, central planning by the government dictates which goods or services are produced, how they are produced, and who will receive them. In practice, to a pure communism is a practically non-existent today, and only a few countries, that is notably North Korea and Cuba, that operate under rigid centrally planned economic system. Okay, under socialism, The industries that provide essential services such as utilities, banking services, and healthcare also, that is may be government owned. Okay, other businesses are owned privately just because of its own business. That is called as it's a private. Okay. Next is central planning allocates the goods and services produced by government run industries and tries to ensure that the resulting wealth is distributed equally. In contrast, the privately owned companies are operated for the purpose of making a profit for their owners. In general, workers in socialist economy work fewer hours, have longer vacations, and receives more health, education, and childcare benefits than do workers in capitalist economies. Then, to offset the high cost of public services, that is, taxes are generally steep. Okay, examples of socialist countries include Sweden and France. Next type of economic system is free market system, in which most businesses are owned and operated by individuals, is the free market system, also known as a capitalism. In a free market, competition dictates how goods and services will be allocated. Okay, business is conducted with only limited government involvement. The economies of the United States and other countries such as Japan are based on capitalism. So in capitalism economic system, capitalist economic system, there is a production is carried out to maximize private profit. Next is decisions regarding investment and the use of the means of production are determined by competing business owners in the marketplace. Next is production takes place within the process of capital accumulation, and the mean of production are owned primarily by private enterprises and decisions regarding production, and also their investment determined by private owners in the capital market. So capitalist system range from laissez-faire with minimal government regulation and state enterprise to regulated and social market system with the stated aim of ensuring social justice and a more equitable distribution of wealth and the market failures. So next type economic systems is mixed economies. A mixed economy system is a system that combines aspect of both capitalism and socialism. Okay, a mixed economic system protects the private property and allow a level of economic freedom in the use of capital, but but also allows for governments to interfere in economic activities in order to achieve social aims. According to neoclassical theory, that is, mixed economies are less efficient than pure free markets. But pro- proponents of government intervention argue that the base conditions required for efficiency in free markets, such as just equal information and rational market participants, cannot be achieved in practical application. Okay, then most modern economies feature a synthesis of two or more economic systems with economies falling at some point along a continuum. The public sector works alongside the private sector but may compete for the same limited resources. That is, mixed economy system do not block the private sector from profit seeking but do regulate business and may nationalize industries that provide a public good. That is, for example, We taken just for example, one example, that is India, as it leaves ownership of the means of production in mostly private hands but incorporates elements, okay, such as subsidies for agriculture, regulation on manufacturing, and partial or full public ownership of some industries like later delivery and national defense. In fact, all known historical and modern economies fall somewhere on the continuum of mixed economies. That is combination of capitalism and socialism. Both pure socialism and pure free markets represent theoretical construct only. Next is economic planning. The constitution came into force on 26th January 1950. It is subsequently Planning Commission was set up on 15th March 1950, and the plan era started from 1 April 1951 with the launching of the first 5-year plan, that is 1951 to 1956. Uh, this article just will keep you updated regarding the history and objectives of economic planning in India. Okay, so first of all, what are the 5 plans in economic planning of the India? That is, the term economic planning is used to describe the long-term plans of the government of India to develop and coordinate the economy with efficient utilization of resources. That is, economic planning in India started after independence in the year 1950. It was deemed necessary for economic growth and development of the nation. Then here, just 5 years plan in India, that is long-term objectives of that 5-year plans. Then what are these objectives? First is high growth rate to improve the living standard of the residents of India. Next is economic stability for prosperity. Next objective is self-reliant economy. Next is social justice and reducing the inequalities. And last objective is modernization of the economy. The idea of economic planning for 5 years was taken from the Soviet Union under the socialist influence of the first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. The first 8 5-year plan in India emphasized on growing the public sector with huge investment in heavy and basic industries. But since the launch of 5-year plan is 1997, but attention has shifted toward making government a growth facilitator. Okay, an overview of all 5-year plans implemented in India is highlighted. That is, first 5-year plan. What is the assessment of that plan? Then the targets and objectives more or less achieved with an active role of the state in all economic sector. So, 5 Indian institutions of technology, that is IITs, were started a major technical institutions in 1951 and 1951 to 1956. Then what are the objectives of that? Uh, that is the rapid agriculture development to achieve food self-sufficiency in the shortest possible time and the control of inflation. Then what is a second 5-year plans assessment? That is just 1956 to 1961. It could not be implemented fully due to the shortage of foreign exchange. Then target had to be pruned, yet hydroelectric power projects and 5 steel mills at Bhilai, that is Durgapur and Rourkela, were established. And what is the objectives of that second 5-year plan. The Nehru model was adopted rapid industrialization with particular emphasis on the development of basic and heavy industries. Industrial policy of 1956 accepted the establishment of a socialistic pattern of society as the goal of economic policy. Next is third 5-year plan. Their assessment is failure, wars and droughts. Yet, panchayat elections were started for the state electricity boards and state secondary education board were formed. That's objectives are establishment of a self-reliant and self-generating economy. Okay, then comes in annual plan, that is 1966 to 1969. That is the assessment is a new agriculture strategy was implemented. It involved the distribution of high yielding varieties of seeds, extensive use of fertilizers, exploitation and irrigation potential, and the soil conservation measures. That is objective is crisis in agriculture and serious food shortage required attention. Next, fourth 5-year plan is given in the 1969 to 1974. That was ambitious. That is a big failure. That is achieved a growth of 3.5%, but was marred to inflation. The Indira Gandhi government nationalized 14 major Indian banks and the Green Revolution in India in advanced agriculture. That is the growth with stability and progressive achievement of self-reliance, Garibi Hatao target. Okay, next fifth 5-year plan is 1947 to 1979. That is the high inflation was determined by the Janta government. Yet the Indian national highway system was introduced for the first time in that year. That is 1974 to 1979. That is a removal of poverty and attainment of the self-reliance. Next 5-year plan is 1980 to 1985. That is the most target achieved. That is the growth is 5.5 BC. The family planning was also expanded in order to prevent overpopulation. That is the direct attack on the problem of poverty by creating conditions of an expanding economy. Next is seventh 5-year plan. That is between 1985 to 1990. With a growth rate of 6%, this plan was proved successful in spite of severe drought conditions for the first 3 years consecutively. This plan introduced programs like Jawahar Rozgar Yojana. That is emphasis on policies and programs that would accelerate the growth in food grain production, increase employment opportunities, and raise productivity. Next annual plan is 1989 to 1991. That is, it was the beginning of privatization and liberalization in India. No plan due to political uncertainties. Okay. Next, eighth 5-year plan is 1992 to 1997. That is a partly success. An average annual growth rate of 6.78% against the target 5.6% was achieved. Next ninth 5-year plan is between the 1997 to 2002. It achieved a GDP growth rate of 5.4%, lower than the target. Industrial growth was 4.5%, which was higher than targeted, that is 3% only. Then the service industry had a growth rate of 7.8%, an average annual growth rate of 6.7% was reached. That is the only focuses on quality of life, generation of productive employment, regional balance, and self-reliance. That is the growth with social justice and equality. That is the growth target is 6.5% only. 10th 5-year plan is between 2002 to 2007. It was successful in reducing the poverty ratio by 5%, increasing forest cover to 25%, and increasing literacy rate to 75%, and the economic growth of the country over only 8%. Okay, to achieve that 8% GDP growth rate, the reduce poverty by 5 points and increase the literacy rate in the country. Then 11th 5-year plan, that is between the 2007 to 2012, the India has recorded an average annual economic growth rate of 8%. Then farm sector or agriculture sector grew at an average rate of 3.7% as against 4% targeted. The industry grew with an annual average growth of 7.2 against 10% targeted. Okay. Next 12th year 12th 5-year plan is between 2012 to 2017. That is the faster, sustainable and more inclusive growth. That is a proposes a growth target of 8%. That is a raising agriculture sector or agriculture output to 4%, and that is the manufacturing sector growth to 10%. The target of adding over 88,000 MW of power generation capacity. Okay. Here, the what are the objectives of economic planning in India? So, first objective is economic development. This is the main objective of planning in India, economic planning in India. This is the economic development of India is measured by the increase in gross domestic product, that is GDP, and per capita income. Next objective is increased level of employment. An important aim of economic planning in India is to better utilize the available human resources of the country by increasing the employment levels. Okay. Next objective is self-sufficiency. India aims to be self-sufficient in major commodities and also increase export through economic planning. The Indian economy had reached the takeoff stage of development during the third 5-year plan in that is 1961 to 1966. Next objective is economic stability. Economic planning in India also aim at stable market condition in addition to the economic growth of India. This means keeping inflation low while also making sure that deflation in prices does not happen. If the wholesale price index rises very high or very low, that is structural defects in the economy are created, and economic planning aim to avoid this. Next objective of economic planning is social welfare and provision of efficient economic or efficient social services. The objectives of all the 5-year plan as well as plans suggested by the NITI aim to increase labor welfare, social welfare for all sections of the society. That is development of social services in India, such as education, healthcare, and emergency services have been part of the planning of India. Okay. Next is social. Sorry. Next objective is regional development. Economic planning in India aims to reduce regional disparities in development. For example, some states like Punjab, Haryana, and Gujarat, and also includes Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, are relatively well developed economically, while States like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Odisha, Assam, and Nagaland are economically backward. Others like Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh have uneven development with world-class economic center in cities and relatively less development in a hinterland. That is, a planning in India aim to study these disparities and suggest the strategies to reduce them. Okay. Next objective is comprehensive and sustainable development. That is the development of all economic sector such as agriculture, industry, and services is one of the major objectives of economic planning. Next is reduction in economic inequality. Measures to reduce inequality through progressive taxation, employment generation, and reservation of jobs has been a central objective of Indian economic planning since independence. And next objective is social justice. These objectives of planning is related to all the other objectives and has been a central focus on planning in India. It aims to reduce the population of people living below the poverty line and provide them access to employment and social services. And last objective is increase standard of living. That is by increasing the per capita income. An equal distribution of income is one of the main aim of India's economic planning. Then what is the history of economic planning in India? So it dates back to pre-independence period when leaders of the freedom movement of prominent industrialists and academics worked together to discuss the future of India after independence, which was soon to come. But noted civil engineer and administrator, that is M. Vishweswarya, is regarded as a pioneer of economic planning in India. Then his book, that is a planned economy for India, is also published in 1936. That is listed a 10-year plan of India after independence. Okay, the industry policy statement published just after independence in 1948, that is recommended setting up of a planning commission and following a mixed economy model. Here are the major milestones related to that economic planning in India. First is setting up of the planning commission in 15th March 1950. Then first 5-year plan, that is 1st April 1950, and dissolution of the planning commission, that is on 13th August 2014. Then setting up Niti Aayog, that is National Institution for Informing India, that is 1st January 2015. Okay, that is setting up the Niti Aayog was a major step away from the command economy structure adopted by India till 1991. The Planning Commission top-down model of development had become redundant due to present economic conditions, and Niti Aayog approaches economic planning in a consultative manner with input from various state governments and think tanks. While preparing for the UPSC exam, the economic planning should be approached in a systematic manner. Okay, the major achievements of economic planning in India, it's a remain an important part of the UPSC syllabus. The strategy of economic planning in India under the Planning Commission as well as the Niti Aayog are important as well. Then what is the function of Niti Aayog? Niti Aayog means National Institution for Informing India. It is involve a shared vision of national development properties sectors and strategies with the active involvement of the states in the light of national objectives. To foster cooperative federalism through structured support initiative and mechanism with the state on a continuous basis. That is recognizing that strong state make a strong nation. To develop mechanism to formulate credible plans at the village level and aggregate these progressively at higher level of government. To ensure on area that are specifically referred to it that the interest of national security are incorporated in economic strategy and policy. That is to pay special attention to the sections for our society that may be at risk of not benefiting adequately from economic progress. Next function is to design strategic and long-term policy and program frameworks and initiatives and monitor their progress and their efficacy. The lesson learned through monitoring and feedback will be used for making innovative improvements, including necessary mid-course corrections also. To provide advice and encourage partnership between key stakeholders and national and international like-minded think tanks as well as the educational and policy research institutions to create a knowledge, innovation, and entrepreneur support system through a collaborative community of national and international experts, that is, the practitioners and other partners, to offer a platform for resolution of intersectoral and interdepartmental issues in order to accelerate the implementation of the development of agenda. That are the functions of Niti Aayog. Okay, that is next is economic reforms. Then what is economic reforms? It refers to the only fundamental changes that were launched in 1991 with the plan of liberalizing the economy and to quicken its rate of economic growth. The Narasimha Rao government India 1991 they started the economic reforms in order to rebuild internal and external faith in the Indian economy. The reform indicates at bringing in larger cooperation of the private sector in the growth that method of the Indian economy. The policy changes were proposed with regard to technology upgradation. That is the industrial licensing, the removal of restrictions on the private sector, foreign investments, and foreign trade. The essential feature of that economic reform are liberalization, privatization, and globalization. That is commonly known as a LPG. In other words, the economic reforms normally indicates to deregulation or at a time to decrease in the size of government to eliminate deformities caused by management or the presence of administration rather than current or raised regulation or government plans to lessen provisions created by the market failure. Then what is the need of economic reform? The poor performance of the industrial sector, adverse balance of the payment, rise in fiscal deficit, inflation, and the Gulf War. That is the example of economic reforms is liberalization, privatization, and globalization. So, then why were economic reform introduced in India? Then it is introduced in India because of the following or some of the reasons that are the poor performance of the public sector. That is, the public sector was given a role important in development policies during 1951 to 1990. However, the performance of the majority of public enterprises was disappointing, and they were incurring huge losses because of insufficient or inefficient management. Next is adverse BOP or imports exceeded export. Imports give a high rate without matching the growth of exports. That is, government would not restrict imports even after imposing heavy tariffs and fixing quotas. On the other hand, the export was very less due to the low quality and high prices of our goods as compared to foreign goods. Next is fall in foreign exchange reserves. Then foreign exchange, foreign currencies, that reserves which government generally maintain to import petrol and other important items dropped to level that were not sufficient for even a fortnight, and the government was not able to repay its borrowings from abroad. Next point is huge debt on government. Government expenditure on various development or developmental works was more than its revenue from taxation. So, as a result, the government borrowed money from banks, public and international financial institutions like IMF, etc. Next point is inflationary pressure. There was a consistent rise in the general price level of essential goods in the economy. That is, to control inflation, a new set of policies were required. Then, what are the terms and conditions of World Bank and IMF? That is, India received financial help of $7 billion from the World Bank and IMF on an agreement to announce its new economic policy. Next condition is that industrial policy. Okay, that is the new economic policies. That is the main aim of the government was to free the Indian industry from the chains of licensing. The regulatory roles of the Indian government refer to the policy toward industries, their establishments, their functioning, their expansion, their growth, as well as their management. So, industrial growth of a country is guided and regulated through its industrial policies. That is, first is industrial policies of 1948. The first industrial policy after independence was announced on 6th April 1948. It was presented by Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee, then industry minister. The main goal of this policy was to accelerate the industrial development by introducing a mixed economy where the private and public sector was accepted as important in the development of the economy. It saw the Indian economy in socialistic patterns. The large industries were classified into four categories. First is industries with exclusive state monopoly, strategic industries. It includes industries engaged in the activity of atomic energy, railways, and arms and ammunition. Next, next category is industry with government control. This category include industries of national importance. 18 such categories were mentioned in this category, such as fertilizer, heavy machinery, defense equipment, heavy chemicals, and so on. Next category is industries with mixed sector. This category include industries that were allowed to operate independently in the private or public sector. The government was allowed to review the situation to acquire any existing private undertaking and the industry in the private sector. That is the fourth category. Industry which were not mentioned in the above category, above three categories, that is fall into this category. These are the high importance was granted to small businesses and small industries. It is leading to the utilization of local resources and creating employment. Next industrial policy resolution is 1956, that is announced on April 20th April 1956, which replaced the policy of 1948. The feature of this policy is a new classification of industries, non-discriminatory and fair treatment for the private sector promotion of village and small-scale industries. Then to achieve development by removing regional disparity and the labor welfare. The IRDA divide industries into three categories. That is Schedule A industries, Schedule B industries, and Schedule C industries. Then the industries that were under the monopoly of the state or government, it includes seven industries. That is the private sector was also introduced in this industry if national interest required. That is all includes in Schedule A industry. Then what is in Schedule B industry? In this category of business or industries, the state was allowed to establish new units, but the private sector was not denied to set up or expand existing units. For example, chemical industries, fertilizer, synthetic rubber, aluminium, and so on. And the Schedule C industry that were not a part of the above mentioned industries, it means not included in Schedule A industry and Schedule B industry, that is formed as a part of the C industries. Schedule C industries. That is, to summarize the policy of 1956, in which the state was given a primary role for industrial development as capital was scarce and business was not strong. Next is Indian policy statement 1973, that is the identified high priority industries with investment from large industrial houses and foreign companies were permitted. Okay, large industries were permitted to start operations in rural and backward areas with a view to developing those areas and enabling the growth of the small industries. And so the basic feature of Indian policy statement is, that is, the policy was directed toward removing the distortions. It provided for a closer interaction between agriculture and industrial sector. Next is priority was given toward generation and transmission of power. And next is the list of industries reserved for the small scale sector was expanded, and the last is special legislation was made to protect cottage and household industries were introduced. Next is Indian policy statement in 1977. The statement was announced by George Fernandez, then the Union Industry Minister of the Parliament. The highlight of this policy are target on the development of small scale and cottage industry. This include household and cottage industry for self-employment. Tiny sector investment up to 1 lakh or 1 lakh. That is the small scale industry for investment up to 1 to 15 lakhs. Next point is large scale sector. That is the basic industries. Includes infrastructure and development of small scale and village industries. And next is capital goods industries. That is the meeting the requirement of cottage industries. And the high technological industries, development of agriculture and small scale industries such as petrochemical, fertilizers and pesticides, etc. Next point is district the control of big business houses. And last part is role of the public sector, that is development of ancillaries industries, and to make available expertise in technology and management in small and cottage industries. And last point is revival and rehabilitation of sick unit. Okay, next policy type is Industrial Policy 1980, that is announced on 23rd July 1980, and that policies feature are the promotion of balanced growth and extension and simplification of automatic expansion, that is the taking over industrial sick unit, and the regulation and control of unauthorized access production capabilities, that is installed for industrial houses. Next feature is redefining the role of small scale units and improving the performance of the public sector. Next policy is New Industrial Policy 1991. There are few features given here, that is the public sector de-reservation and privatization of the public sector through disinvestment. Next is industrial licensing. Amendments to monopolies and restrictive trade practices, that is MRTP Act 1969, that is the feature of NIP, New Educational Policy 1991. Then liberalized foreign investment policy. Next feature is Foreign Technology Agreement, that is FTA. And last is relation of protection to SSI and emphasis on competitiveness enhancement. Okay. Next policy is monetary policy. So, monetary policy refers to the policy of the central bank with regard to the use of monetary instruments under its control to achieve the goals specified in the Act. So, RBI, Reserve Bank of India, is vested with the responsibility of conducting monetary policy. Okay, this responsibility is explicitly mandated under the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. Then, what are the goals of monetary policy? The primary objective of that policy is to maintain price stability while keeping in mind the objective of growth. Price stability is a necessary precondition to sustainable growth. Next is in May 2016, the Reserve Bank of India (RBI) Act 1935, sorry, 1934 was amended to provide a statutory basis for the implementation of the flexible inflation targeting framework. Next is the amended RBI Act also provide for the inflation target to be set by the Government of India in consultation with the Reserve Bank once in every 5 years. Then, according to the central bank or central government has notified in the official gazette, that is a 4% consumer price index, that is CPI inflation, as target for the period from 5th August 2016 to 31st March 2021, with the upper tolerance limit of 6% and the lower tolerance limit of 2%. The central government notified the following as a factor that constitute failure to achieve the inflation target. That is, first is the average inflation is more than the upper tolerance level of the inflation target for any 3 consecutive quarters. Or next is the average inflation is less than the lower tolerance level for any 3 consecutive quarters. So the prior to the amendment in the RBI Act in May 2016, the flexible inflation targeting framework was governed by an agreement on the monetary policy framework between the government and the Reserve Bank of India, February 2015. So, what are the framework of that monetary policy, which is handled by RBI, Reserve Bank of India? The amended RBI Act explicitly provide the legislative mandate to the Reserve Bank to operate the monetary policy framework of the country. So, the framework aims at setting the policy, that is the rate based on an assessment of the current and evolving macroeconomic situation and modulation of liquidity conditions to anchor money market rates at or around the repo rate. Repo rate changes the transmit through the money market to the entire the financial system, which in turn influences aggregate demand, a key determinant of inflation and the growth. Next framework is once the repo rate is announced, the operating framework designed by the Reserve Bank aviation liquidity management on a day-to-day basis through appropriate actions, which aim at anchoring the operating target, the weightage average call rate, that is WACR, around that repo rate. The operating framework is fine-tuned and revised depending on the evolving financial market and monetary conditions, while ensuring consistency with the monetary policy stance. The liquidity management framework was the last revised significantly in April 2016. So here these are the framework and the sum of the instrument of monetary policy, that is the first is repo rate, the fixed interest rate at the which the Reserve Bank provide overnight liquidity to bank against the collateral of business and other approved securities under the liquidity adjustment facility, that is LAF, liquidity adjustment facility. Next instrument is reverse repo rate, the interest rate at which the Reserve Bank absorbs liquidity on an overnight basis from bank against the collateral of eligible government securities under the LAF, that is liquidity adjustment facility. Next instrument is the LAF. The liquidity adjustment facility consists of overnight as well as sorry, term repo auctions. That is progressively the Reserve Bank has increased the proportion of liquidity injected under fine tuning variable rate, that is the repo auction of range of the tenors. The aim of term repo is to help develop the interbank term money market, which is turn can set market based benchmarks for pricing of loans and deposits and hence improve transmission of monetary policy. The Reserve Bank also conduct variable interest rate, that is reverse repo auctions, as necessitated under the market condition. Next instrument is marginal standing facility, that is MSF, a facility under which scheduled commercial bank can borrow additional amount of overnight money from the Reserve Bank by dipping into their statutory liquidity ratio, that is SLR portfolio up to a limit at a penal rate of interest. This provides a safety wall against unanticipated liquidity shock to the banking system. Next instrument is corridor. The MSF, marginal standing facility rate and reserve repo rate, determine the corridor for the daily movement in the weighted average call money rate. Next is bank rate. It is rate at which the Reserve Bank is ready to buy or rediscount bills of exchange or other commercial papers. The bank rate is published under Section 49 of the Reserve Bank of India 1934. This rate has been aligned to the MSF rate and therefore changes automatically as and when the MSF rate changes the alongside policy, that is that repo rate changes. Next instrument is CRR, cash reserve ratio. The average daily balance that a bank is required to maintain with the Reserve Bank as a share of such percent of its net demand and time liability that the Reserve Bank may notify from time to time in the Gazette of India. Next instrument is statutory liquidity ratio (SLR). These NDTL, net demand and time liabilities that a bank is required to maintain in safe and liquid assets such as unencumbered government securities, that is cash and gold. Changes in SLR often influence the availability of that resources in the banking system for lending to the private sector. Next instrument is open market operation, that is OMO. This include both outright purchase and sale of government securities for injection and absorption of durable liquidity respectively. And last instrument is market stabilization scheme, that is MSS. This instrument for monetary management was introduced in 2004. Surplus liquidity of more enduring nature arising from large capital inflows in observed through sale of short-dated government securities and treasury bills. The cash so mobilized is held in a separate government account with the Reserve Bank. Okay, these are the some um, instruments for the um, monetary policy. Then we will see what is fiscal policy. Then fiscal policy is the guiding force that helps the government decide how much money it should spend to support the economic activity and how much revenue it must earn from the system to keep the wheels of the economy running smoothly. Then fiscal policy in India, it is the guiding forces that help government decide how much money it should spend to support the economic activity and how much revenue it must earn from the system to keep the wheels of the economy that is running smoothly. In recent time, eh, the importance of the fiscal policy has been increasing to achieve economic growth in both India and across the world also. That is, attaining rapid economic growth is one of the key goal of a fiscal policy formulated by the government of India. Fiscal policy along with the monetary policy plays a crucial role in managing a country's economy. Then what is the meant by fiscal policy in India? An example of that fiscal policy in India is through the fiscal policy, the government of a country control the flow of tax revenues and public expenditure to navigate the economy. Okay. The if the government receives more revenue than it spends, it runs a surplus, while if it spends more than the tax and non-tax receipt, it runs a deficit. To meet additional expenditures, the government need to borrow domestically or from overseas. That is, alternatively, the government may also choose to draw upon its foreign exchange reserves or print additional money. The main then we will see the some main objectives of that fiscal policy in India also. In India only, first is economic growth. It helps. It means fiscal policy help maintain the economy's growth rate, so the certain economic goals can be achieved. Next is price stability. It control the price level of the country so that when the inflation is too high, prices can be regulated. And next objective is full employment. It aim to achieve full employment or near full employment as a tool to recover from low economic activity. Then, what are the importance of fiscal policy in India? So, in a country like India, fiscal policy plays a key role in elevating the rate of capital formation both in the public and private sector. Through taxation, the fiscal policy helps mobilize considerable amount of resources for financing its numerous projects. Next importance is fiscal policy also helps in providing stimulus to elevate the saving rate. And the fiscal policy gives adequate incentives to the private sector to expand its activities. And next importance is the fiscal policy aims to maintain or to minimize the imbalance in the dispersal of the income and the wealth. Okay, so in business and government, there are some components of business environment, that is economic environment, global environment, local environment, constitutional government environment, political environment, national environment, and competitive environment. In the government environment, there are some points are included, that is governance structure, policies and guidelines, planning, entrepreneurship, and regulation. But in that policy and guidelines, there are industrial policy. So, previously, before 2 minutes, we will see that the policies, that is the industrial policy, fiscal policy, trade policy, and other policies, and also promotional and development organizations too. And in the regulation, that are the laws and other regulations are included. Okay, so here the classification of that state also are included. So we will just see in short what are the roles of that state and what are the government intervention in business. So for that, the what are the functions of government? First is basic function. This include just only this include the pure public goods such as the provision of property rights, macroeconomic stability, control of infectious diseases, safe water, roads, and protection of the destitutes. And next function is intermediate function. This include matters such as management of externalities. For example, good example of that function is pollution. That is regulation of monopolies and the provision of social insurance includes pensions, unemployment benefits, and so on. And last function of government is activist function. These involve measures to stabilize and promote market and to redistribute assets or that income. That are the basic functions or just functions of government. And the last part of this session is economic role of the government. There are four role include. First is regulatory role. So in the regulation may cover a wide spectrum extending from entry into a business to the conduct of the business to final result of the business, and also the exist. The regulation is very important for the proper functioning of that market economy. So next role is entrepreneur role. That is the direct participation of government in business was very common, particularly in the socialist and developing countries. So reasons include ideological and dearth of private entrepreneurship and capital. So in the privatization, however, has become widespread since the mid 1980s. Third role is planning. The national necessity for proper utilization of scarce resources and prioritization of development objectives and ideological reasons have made this an important role of government in the developing and socialist countries. And last economic role of the government is promotional role. This is also more important in developing countries than in the developed because speedy development of the industry and commerce and the economy require the development of the infrastructure, that is including facilitating organization. So here we covered this business and government unit. So here's a PDF of this lecture. I will share on your group. Then you can read it easily. And now we are stop here. Yes, thank you.
Hello.